my continuation with His Excellency Lynchen, the Prime Minister of Bhutan. So I do believe that we were on good governance. How are you, Excellency?
Very, very well. Very well. Time is the only problem now.
Yes. Okay, so should we get right to it?
Yes.
Okay. So, no, actually we were on preservation and promotion of culture. How does Bhutan achieve the trade-off between the media's control of information in a way that is healthy for the public and preserves and propagates culture, and on the other extreme, the censorship at worst or restricting creative freedom at best? Should media be controlled or given guidelines at all?
Let me simply say the media should be responsible. And the media, by itself, through its own volition, must find a means whereby it can regulate itself, self-regulation. But certainly the government has no intention in any way to restrict or limit its freedom. And we have not tried at all.
How does G&H take into account the embeddedness of the individual in a society or community? And how is this different from other approaches? What is done to encourage a rich and non-stagnant relationship with tradition and culture?
I'm not so sure I understand your question, actually.
How does G&H take into account the embeddedness of an individual in not only the market but also in culture and traditions and rites and ceremony that mean things, and not restrict it so as to make it a sort of culture museum or something stagnant? How does culture evolve under G&H?
Well, let me say, within the G&H framework, we recognize culture as a manifestation of the dynamic process of human development. Culture, we see it as a set of tools, a set of systems, values that are developed by society for its own advancement. And the individual is at the center of it.
How is the development of culture supported by the government? Has the government found artistic endeavors or reach out to children, or is it part of the budget allocated to it? Or?
Government facilitates, government encourages, and yes, for those important manifestations or expressions of our culture, such as, let us say, the annual festivals in each of the valleys, these are, yes, supported by the state, because while they are values and traditions in themselves, they have also an economic value as well to the society.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Your Excellency. Also, right. So economics, as it is popularly practiced, ignores non-market activities, which culminate in the very fabric of sustainable and distributive societies, and ultimately to the sense of community that best enables individual welfare and human development. How does G&H manage to, in doing so, dismantle the false dichotomies of public, private, community, individual, to give a more realistic picture of social cohesion and real living without writing it into policy in a way that impinges on these domains of public and private?
Can you repeat that? It's very complicated, your question.
Okay. So economics, as it's popularly practiced, ignores non-market activities, which culminate in the very fabric of sustainable and distributive societies, and ultimately to a sense of community that best enables individual welfare and human development. How does G&H manage to take into account this cultural dimension and dismantle the false dichotomies of public and private that may ignore that cultural aspect of the human being, and its higher needs and purposes, and like these false dichotomies between community and individual, to give a more realistic picture of social cohesion and real living. Without
well, I think it's the answer is there in your own question itself. It is a false dichotomy.
Yes, but how do you not impinge on the private as well as take that into account?
Well, in fact, G&H is all about the individual, and what this holistic development paradigm, what it does is to place the individual in the center of development. It is the focus of development.
Okay.
And the economic, the well-being of the individual is no more important than the social, emotional and psychological well-being of the individual. And that individual can best thrive in a society if he or she is an active member of the community and contributes to it.
Okay.
And in turn, is facilitated in terms of the individual's well-being by the community.
Okay, so is there a role of the community that the government doesn't really interfere in, or does the government support the community?
Let me say that G&H, within that philosophy, we believe that the community, the vitality of the community has a key role in enabling the pursuit of happiness by an individual member of it.
True. Okay.
And so we encourage it. And among other things that we are advocating and we are encouraging is to strengthen, to create conditions whereby the institution of the family, the extended family network is encouraged.
Okay.
To be conscious of it.
So how is this incentivized?
And there is, for instance, I wouldn't say it's being incentivized, but we are raising consciousness of it. And for instance, in the school levels, in the schools, for instance, the children are being told that, well, wealth is not only in the form of how much you have, in terms of your material possessions. It's, among other things, it's about how happy and how integral your family is. How many friends do you have? How many cousins do you have? How often do you visit? How often do your family, do your relatives visit you? And how you are able to support each other. It is within that you are able to find security. That in the end, wealth wealth must be sustainable, and the relationship is what is in fact sustainable, while wealth in the material sense is ephemeral.
Okay, which is really interesting because the government uses a variety of approaches. So the culture in a way is kept sustainable and autonomous through awareness building. Brilliant. So has the emphasis on culture and the shift from production and material-based macroeconomic policy led to a determinable increase in social capital?
I wouldn't say that. What I would say is that social capital was what we had. We had a wealth of it.
Yeah.
But under the modernization and development process, where the government started taking over the responsibilities of the communities, what the community was able to do for itself in the past through social capital, through voluntarism and so on, the government took over, and in the process undermined this social wealth. However, in recent times, especially in the last 10-15 years, there has been a growing emphasis on the revitalization of the social capital. And I see this happening. One common sight you have, for instance, is how various elements, sections of the society, including various departments and agencies of the government, are taking upon themselves the responsibility of keeping the city clean.
Yes.
Last week, for instance, I believe it was the judiciary, where all the employees of the judiciary were out in the streets cleaning up Thimphu.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So it's being rebuilt, In terms of, we are now, for instance, at the block level, at the community level, we are reminding them of what kind of capacities they had in the past, and how they must assume greater responsibility for the upkeep of their community schools, of their farm roads, of their drinking water supply schemes, and so on. And of course, when it comes to house construction and things like that, people help each other in the rural areas. Not much of this is actually visible in the urban setting.
Okay, so what I've understood, Your Excellency, is that as the government, you're very acutely aware of the state's ability, if not monitored, to crowd out social capital.
That's right.
And at the same time, you've seen the state and the individual members of the state as setting proactive examples.
That's right.
So the state sector and the civil society organizations, in a way, set them up.
A reversal is taking place now.
Okay.
Having learned from its mistakes, I think there is a sense of responsibility now.
Okay, that's
on the
amazing.
part of the state and its members, yes.
Okay, that's a brilliant distinction. Thank you, Your Excellency. Also, are technology and tradition mutually enabling or detrimental to each other?
Mutually enabling. Mutually enabling. I think technology has been the key force behind the advancement of society, both in material as well as in social ways. And so these are not mutually exclusive or mutually harmful, but definitely complementary. And the G&H supports this idea.
Your Excellency, you've proven by example that social media is a way of reaching out and participatory democracy. Because I know many people who are very touched that they've been able to be your friends on Facebook and interact with them.
I feel enriched.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Socially through technology.
Brilliant. How is the promotion of culture undertaken in a way that is meaningful, deep and relevant to people? For instance, Dasho Karma Ura from the CBS, in his book on education, which I actually went through all of it, said that there is an understanding of culture, but sometimes this can be shallow. Like, people will talk about the color of the scarves and like the different, there's an awareness of the rank and file, which is also very important, but not the meaningful lessons from Bhutan's rich mythopoeia in a way that can be synthesized by the individual. For instance, he said that the Buddha is great in his teachings, and that's what we should imbibe, but the way of the Buddha may not necessarily be a model to copy-paste into your own life. How is this, the promotion of culture, undertaken in a way that is meaningful, deep and relevant?
Well, I guess in many ways, as parents, as teachers, and as elders, we are involved in the process of actually transferring not only the form, but the essence of what we do and why we do things. And I understand that while in the past the form may have been everything, because of the lack of education and understanding. Presently, as our society is becoming more and more educated, there is this desire to go beyond the form into the essence, and I think there is now a very good balance in terms of understanding both.
Sure. I understand that meditation is a big part of schooling, but there have been concerns about the depth of understanding. I mean, it's very good that Bhutan's embarked on a trajectory to reclaim their cultural heritage. But for instance, there was this funny story of someone asking their child, so what do you do when you meditate? And she was like, well, I meditate on chocolate. Or so you certainly have.
Well, there will be such cases. There will be those, and who understand fully and there will be those who have difficulty in understanding.
Sure.
But there is a process, there is, by and large, a greater desire to understand both aspects.
Sure.
At all levels.
Yes. Also, now we get to good governance, where Your Excellency is a glowing example. So, please explain how gross national happiness is both the vision of state and the organizing principle for state as well.
Well, in terms of vision, the government is guided by this sense of duty to create the conditions for the promotion of happiness, to enable citizens to pursue happiness. At the organizational and at the structural level, you have the government organized in such a way as to be best able to create the enabling environment. And so you have the government pursuing such strategies as the 4 pillars. You have the various agencies pursuing the very specifically those aspects of development that will have a direct impact on creating those conditions.
Okay. So how are policies vetted with the G&H lens?
Well, formally,